So I want you to start by thinking about a really specific feeling. Maybe it hits you on a Sunday evening, like right as the weekend is fading out.
Yeah, that classic Sunday dread.
Right, exactly. Or, maybe it's on a Tuesday morning. You're sitting in your car in the parking lot and you're just staring at the front doors of your office building.
Oh, I think we've all been there.
Yeah. You think about opening your laptop, looking at your inbox, and you are just hit with this profound, heavy dread. Just a complete and utter lack of motivation.
And the really confusing part for a lot of people is that, on paper at least, you shouldn't feel this way.
Right. Because you have the perks, you fought for the nice title, you negotiated the salary bump, you might even have like the hybrid remote schedule or the corner office.
But instead of feeling like trophies for all your hard work, these things just feel like, I don't know, incredibly heavy chains. You just feel completely apathetic.
Exactly. And it's a pervasive feeling right now. Welcome to the Deep Dive, by the way. I'm your host, and today we're getting into why, across almost every industry, people are looking at their professional lives, seeing these supposed rewards, and realizing that their internal engine is just gone.
Yeah, it's great to be here. And people really do assume they're burning out purely because the work is too hard, or because they've somehow developed this like psychological flaw. They think they've just lost their grit.
Which is such a heavy burden to carry. We default to this assumption that motivation is entirely a psychological phenomenon, right? Just a matter of willpower.
Right.
But today, we're pulling from a corporate training framework that completely shatters that assumption. It's titled Énergie et Engagement, la motivation par l'équilibre somatique, which translates to energy and engagement. Motivation through somatic balance.
It's a fascinating framework.
It really is. It's presented by Dr. Christophe Delong and Connects Formation. And the mission of our deep dive today is to explore how they offer a diagnostic lens that is just entirely different from your typical HR wellness initiatives.
Yeah, because Dr. DeLong brings a very specific expertise to this issue. He's a specialist in physical medicine and rehabilitation, which is often abbreviated as MPR in French, as well as sports medicine.
So he's not an HR guy?
Not at all. He's approaching this modern crisis of workplace motivation not as a psychologist or a management consultant, but as a physician who studies biomechanics, neurobiology, and human energy systems.
Which is honestly incredibly relieving, because his central thesis is that the crisis of motivation in the modern workplace, it's not a psychological failing. It's not laziness.
No, it's a literal biomechanical and neurobiological short circuit.
Short circuit. That's such a great way to put it. We're going to look at how the physical state of your body, right down to like the alignment of your spine and the activation of your nervous system, is dictating your professional endurance.
Connects Formation really asserts that fixing your posture and learning to hack your biological stress responses is the ultimate shortcut here. It's how you reclaim your ambition and your mental clarity.
So to understand why this physical approach is so necessary right now, we first have to look at the collapse of the traditional corporate motivation models, right? Because the old systems relied entirely on psychological and financial leverage.
Yeah, the classic carrot and the stick.
Right. The company car, the corner office, the impressive title. But the source material points out that these external rewards simply don't compensate for the cost of the effort anymore.
They've lost their gravitational pull completely.
Totally. Like if someone offers you a promotion today, your immediate internal response probably isn't excitement.
No, it's usually a calculation of the psychic wear and tear.
Exactly. You look at the new title and you think, okay, this means I have to be available on Slack 24/7, I have to manage 3 more toxic personalities, and my weekends are just gone.
The reward has morphed into a constraint. And the underlying architecture of why those rewards used to work and why they fail so spectacularly now comes down to something the framework calls the time paradox.
The time paradox. Walk us through that.
So human beings, from an evolutionary standpoint, are wired to invest effort based on predictable timelines.
Right.
For the bulk of our history, if you planted seeds in the spring, you knew roughly what the harvest would look like in the fall.
Right. There was a reliable cause and effect.
Exactly. And in the corporate world of, say, the 1980s and 90s, the timeline was similarly stable. The unspoken contract was very clear. You sacrifice your time and energy today, you put your head down for a decade, and you will be rewarded with the pension, the partnership, the stability.
But technological and social acceleration has completely obliterated that predictability. The timeline is just shattered now.
It really is. We don't even know what our specific industries will look like in 3 years, let alone 10. We're looking at the rapid deployment of artificial intelligence, massive shifts in global supply chains, companies restructuring constantly.
The future has just become terrifyingly unpredictable.
And when the future becomes that unpredictable, a profound biological shift happens in how we process motivation. Our brains are essentially these highly tuned risk assessment machines.
Okay, so how does the brain handle that uncertainty?
Well, when the brain looks at a goal, it calculates the immediate energetic costs, so the stress, the late nights, the missed family time, against the probability of the future reward.
And because the future is so uncertain now.
Exactly. The brain steeply discounts the value of that future reward. It literally can no longer justify investing heavy biological resources into a future self that might not even inhabit the same corporate landscape.
That makes me think of the economics of hyperinflation.
Oh, that's a good comparison. How so?
Well, imagine you live in a country where the currency is just rapidly losing value, right? It's inflating by the hour. If you earn $100 today and you know it's only going to have the purchasing power of a few pennies by the time you retire, you are absolutely not going to put it in a savings account.
Right, it would be irrational to save it for a delayed reward.
Exactly. You're going to spend it immediately. You'll buy physical goods, something tangible today. Because if the payoff seems worthless or highly uncertain by the time you reach the finish line, the behavior of saving, or in our case, the behavior of long-term professional striving, it just stops.
That analogy captures the neurological mechanism perfectly. The currency of corporate promises has experienced hyperinflation. In a world characterized by extreme acceleration and instability, the human brain is just forced to seek immediate, tangible return on its energy investment.
So what's the solution then? Where do we find stability?
Well, the framework presented by Dr. Delong in Connexa Formation introduces this profound realization. In a fundamentally unpredictable world, the only stable, reliable territory an individual has left is their own physical body.
Wow. So the body becomes the only currency that hasn't inflated. It's the only environment we have absolute immediate jurisdiction over.
Precisely. Which brings us to the concept of somatic motivation. Somatic meaning of the body. When motivation is rooted in physical well-being and immediate bodily feedback, the reward system functions perfectly.
Because it's immediate.
Right. If you engage in a practice that makes your body feel more resilient, more energized, or just more aligned in the present moment, the neurological reward is guaranteed and instantaneous.
It doesn't rely on macroeconomic trends. It doesn't depend on your quarterly performance review.
And it certainly doesn't require a 5-year strategic plan to pay out.
That structural shift in how we view rewards is fascinating, but, it brings up a major contradiction that we see everywhere in business culture right now.
Yeah. What's that?
Well, when the traditional, predictable corporate ladder falls apart, people naturally start looking for new models of success, right? And who do they look up to? The extreme outliers, the tech titans.
Oh, right.
We see figures like Elon Musk, Sam Altman, Jensen Huang. And the cultural narrative around these individuals is that they are practically disembodied.
Right. They're portrayed as these sheer forces of willpower, like brains in jars that somehow run on diet soda, zero sleep, and pure intellect.
Exactly. They become these mythological figures. They project this image of extreme willpower. They manage to turn impossible civilizational scale visions into reality, and they seem completely immune to the uncertainty we just discussed.
But the danger, according to the sources, is what happens when the average professional tries to extract lessons from that mythology.
Because we internalize a deeply harmful message.
We do. We see these titans operating at what looks like infinite capacity, and we start to believe that achieving high-level success requires transcending the physical body.
We begin to view our own biological needs, the need for sleep, for recovery, for movement, for proper nutrition, as irritating obstacles. We think, if I just push harder, if I just ignore this back pain, if I skip lunch to finish this deck, I'm being like a tech founder.
And it is a fundamental misreading of how high performers actually operate. The Connexa Formation framework points out that we are falling into a trap by confusing ignoring the body with possessing a highly optimized, unconventional biological engine.
Wait, really? Because we constantly hear about the 100-hour work weeks and, sleeping under desks on the factory floor. Are you telling me these guys are actually prioritizing physical wellness?
I know it looks like punishment to an outsider, but they do not ignore their vitality. They actually optimize it to the absolute maximum for their very specific and often genetically anomalous makeup.
Okay, so it's not that they're disembodied.
No, their secret is a concept called somatic intensity.
Let's break down somatic intensity. What does that actually look like?
Well, somatic intensity means having a granular, acute awareness of what your specific biology requires to generate and sustain massive energy, and then ruthlessly managing those inputs and outputs.
So they're not just winging it on no sleep.
Not at all. A tech titan might operate on a polyphasic sleep schedule, or they might utilize intense, highly specialized recovery protocols behind the scenes, hyperbaric chambers, optimized nutritionists, specialized movement coaches.
You have an entire infrastructure.
Exactly. They are deeply connected to their physical capacity to endure. They know exactly where their red line is, and they manage their internal battery with extreme precision.
So if we look at them like vehicles, it's kind of like the difference between a daily commuter car and a Formula One race car.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to look at it.
Right, because a Formula One car is built for extreme performance. It goes 200 miles per hour, the engine runs so hot and screams so loud that it looks like it's being destroyed on the track.
But the reality is the exact opposite of neglect.
Totally.
Yeah.
That engine requires the most obsessive, highly specialized maintenance on the planet to run at that red line without exploding. It needs a massive pit crew. If you take your standard sedan, which is built for reliability over time, not 200-mile-per-hour sprints, and you try to drive it like a Formula One car by just flooring the accelerator and ignoring the maintenance schedule, you aren't going to win a race. You are going to blow the transmission.
The analogy holds up perfectly. The average professional trying to mimic the 100-hour extreme output without possessing the unique genetic resources or those invisible support systems of those titans is driving their sedan straight into a wall.
And burnout is just the mechanical failure of the system.
Exactly. The lesson we should be taking from high performers is not to ignore our physical engine, but to find our own sustainable level of somatic intensity. It is about deeply understanding and optimizing the specific biological vehicle you possess.
So if the goal is to build a sustainable metabolic engine for ourselves, we really have to look at the methodology Dr. Delong brings to the table here. As you mentioned earlier, his background is in physical medicine and rehabilitation, or NPR.
Yes, NPR.
Normally when we hear rehabilitation, we picture someone recovering from a severe trauma, right? Maybe a major car accident, learning how to walk again, or regain basic motor functions. How does that medical discipline translate to an office worker staring at a spreadsheet?
It translates profoundly well, actually, because of the core philosophy of NPR. The discipline of physical medicine and rehabilitation is the science of creating viable life projects despite heavy, sometimes devastating constraints.
Okay, constraint-based.
Right. An NPR physician looks at a patient whose system has been severely compromised. Perhaps they've lost the use of a limb or suffered neurological damage, and they don't just focus on the pathology.
What do they focus on?
They ask a deeply pragmatic question. Given the biological resources we have left and the unchangeable constraints of the injury, how do we generate forward movement? How do we build a functional, meaningful life from this physical baseline?
So they are essentially experts in energy economics. They figure out how to maximize output when the supply is severely restricted.
Exactly. And Dr. Delong is taking this exact medical methodology and applying it to the corporate motivation crisis.
Yeah.
Because the modern workplace is an environment of heavy constraints, chronic stress, sedentary behavior, visual fatigue from screens, constant interruptions.
That's our baseline pathology.
Yes. And the foundational assertion of the Conexa Formation program is that the physical body is the absolute prerequisite for psychological drive. They argue that a worker who is sitting at a desk with a locked lower back, shallow breathing, and a nervous system stuck in permanent hypervigilance literally cannot maintain durable motivation.
Wow. So the hardware is completely malfunctioning, so the software, the ambition, the creativity, it just can't run?
That's it exactly.
Yeah.
To help individuals understand their baseline hardware status, the framework includes a specific self-evaluation diagnostic. It's something you as a listener can reflect on right now.
Let's do it.
It asks you to rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 5 across 6 indicators, where 1 is severe dysfunction and 5 is optimal flow.
Okay, let's walk through these 6 indicators. Listener, as we go through these, try to give yourself an honest score. What's number 1?
Indicator number 1 is physical tension. Do you have locked back?
Mm-hmm.
Is your neck constantly stiff? Do you notice that your breathing is shallow, constrained only to the upper chest?
Okay, number 2.
Sleep quality. When you wake up, do you actually feel biologically recovered, or do you wake up feeling like you've been fighting a war all night?
I know a lot of people scoring a 1 on that. Indicator number 3 is clarity of goals, right? Do you have a crisp understanding of your personal and professional trajectory?
Yes. And indicator number 4, sense of meaning. Do you feel a tangible sense of usefulness in your daily tasks?
Indicator 5 is conflict management. When a disagreement arises, what is your capacity to handle it calmly versus immediately spiking into a defensive emotional reaction?
And finally, indicator number 6, daily energy. What is your average energy level, and is it consistent, or are you crashing heavily at 2:00 p.m. every single day?
So why mix physical and psychological indicators like this?
The diagnostic is revealing because it places physical symptoms right alongside psychological ones. If you are scoring a 1 or a 2 on these indicators, particularly the physical ones like tension and sleep, the Connexo framework flags you as being in a priority zone.
A priority zone.
Right. That means your system is not ready for a conversation about productivity hacks or career coaching. You require immediate physical intervention.
I can imagine a lot of high-achieving professionals pushing back on this, though. They might look at their locked lower back and say, sure, my L4 vertebra aches, but that's just a byproduct of sitting in a chair. My lack of motivation isn't because of my spine. It's because this quarterly report I have to write is inherently boring.
Right. It's a natural skepticism.
Can a physical ache actually stop someone from caring about a promotion or a strategic goal?
It's natural to be skeptical because we are conditioned to separate the mind and the body. We think of pain as merely a distraction, an annoying sensation that a strong mind can just push through.
Just power through it.
Exactly. But the neurobiology of engagement tells a completely different story. Motivation is not a magical cloud of willpower that you summon by trying harder. Motivation is a highly specific, chemically driven biological process.
It requires fuel.
It requires the activation of specific neural circuits. Primarily, it relies on dopaminergic circuits, which drive the sensation of reward, anticipation, and the desire to pursue goals.
The dopamine.
Right. And it also relies on oxytocinergic circuits, which facilitate feelings of connection, trust, and psychological safety within a team.
So how does the body tie into those circuits?
The biological reality, and this is really the crux of Dr. Delong's argument, is that those specific neurochemical circuits are significantly suppressed or entirely blocked when the physical body is in a state of distress.
The sources actually detail the mechanics of this, describing how something as common as back pain acts as a, what do they call it, a major metabolic short circuit.
Yes.
It parasitizes your motivation on 3 distinct levels. It's essentially a hostile takeover of your body's energy reserves.
It really is. The first level of this short circuit is what the framework calls the parasitized proprioceptive loop.
Okay, let's define proprioception first, because it's vital for this. Proprioception is your brain's unconscious ability to map where your body is in physical space, right?
Right. It's how you can touch your nose with your eyes closed. Your muscles, tendons, and joints are constantly sending signals to the brain about their position and tension.
Okay, so how does this loop get parasitized?
Well, when you are sitting with terrible posture slumped forward, shoulders internally rotated, neck jutting out toward the monitor, you're placing immense, unnatural strain on the musculoskeletal system.
The classic desk posture.
Exactly. And your proprioceptive sensors are firing off constant alarm signals. They're screaming at the brain. The cervical spine is out of alignment. The lumbar region is bearing an asymmetrical load. The structural integrity is compromised.
Wow. So the brain is receiving thousands of these tiny distress signals every single second.
Yes. And the brain has to process every single one of them. This massive influx of nociceptive and proprioceptive noise monopolizes the processing power of the central nervous system.
So it's basically eating up your RAM.
Exactly. It creates a massive cognitive load, drawing resources away from the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain responsible for complex decision-making, strategic planning, and emotional regulation.
That makes so much sense. You're trying to focus on a complex data set, but your brain's bandwidth is being eaten up by the task of monitoring your strained neck muscles.
And that leads directly to the second level of the short circuit, the invisible energy cost.
Because holding these dysfunctional postures takes energy.
Exactly. We aren't just sitting still. Posture is an active physiological process. If you are slumping, gravity is trying to pull you down to the desk.
Right.
To prevent your face from hitting the keyboard, the muscles in your lower back, along your spine, and in your neck are constantly firing in a state of isometric contraction.
So it is a continuous, relentless metabolic drain. Those muscles are burning ATP adenosine triphosphate, the cellular energy currency of your body, just to maintain that dysfunctional position.
It's like driving a car with the parking brake engaged. You are burning massive amounts of fuel, but barely moving forward.
And by the time 2:00 p.m. rolls around, you feel exhausted, not because the intellectual work was that grueling, but because your postural muscles have been running a marathon you weren't even aware of.
Right. There is simply less physical energy available to allocate toward voluntary creative action.
That's wild. Okay, so what's the third level?
The third level is the most devastating when it comes to long-term career ambition. The framework calls it reward inhibition.
Reward inhibition.
This takes us back to those dopaminergic circuits we discussed. When your body is in chronic pain or chronic tension, your nervous system interprets that physical distress as an immediate threat to your survival.
It shifts into what Dr. Delong identifies as postural survival mode, right?
Yes, evolutionary biology dictates that immediate physical survival will always, without exception, override abstract, long-term conceptual tasks.
Because the brain operates on a strict hierarchy of needs.
Right. To a nervous system evolved on the savanna, an unbalanced spine or chronic musculoskeletal pain signals a severe vulnerability. It tells the brain, we are injured, we are weak, we are susceptible to predators.
So writing a brilliant email or strategizing a Q3 marketing plan or maneuvering for a promotion, those are abstract, long-term luxuries.
Exactly. The brain will simply not allocate dopamine to pursuing a promotion when it believes the physical organism is under threat right now. It shuts down the circuits required for positive anticipation.
You cannot get excited about a 5-year career trajectory when your biology is trapped in a defensive crouch, just trying to survive the next 5 minutes.
It is a profound realization. Many professionals believe they need to read another productivity book or find a new app to organize their tasks, when in reality, their central processing unit is dedicating 40% of its power to keeping a misaligned spine upright.
So if posture is acting as this massive hidden background application that drains our battery all day, how do we force quit that application? How do we plug the metabolic leak?
Well, the prospect of going to an hour-long physical therapy session every single day is daunting.
Yeah, for someone already hovering near burnout, adding another mandatory appointment to their calendar is just going to increase their stress. We need something immediate.
And this is where the Conexiformation framework moves from diagnostic to highly actionable. They have designed specific interventions meant to be executed right at the desk without special equipment.
Okay, the postural liberation protocols.
Yes. The genius of these protocols is their brevity and their precise targeting of the corporate physiological dysfunctions.
The source outlines these as rapid 3-minute protocols. I want to walk through exactly what these look and feel like so you can begin to integrate the mechanics immediately.
Let's do it.
First, there is the cervical protocol. This is designed to counteract the forward head posture, that shape we all mold into when we peer at small text on a screen, which places sometimes up to 40 pounds of relative pressure on the neck.
Right.
The protocol involves 3 minutes of slow, deliberate movements. So deep cervical rotations, gently tilting the ear toward the shoulder to stretch the scalens, and chin tucks, literally retracting the head straight back on the horizontal plane to realign the cervical vertebrae over the thoracic spine.
That's the first one.
Second is the thoracic protocol. We spend our days internally rotated, right? Our shoulders hunched forward to type. So this protocol focuses on chest opening. It involves expanding the pectoral muscles, pulling the shoulder blades down and together, and engaging in spinal rotations to mobilize the mid-back, which often becomes rigid and locked.
Very common. And the third.
Third is the lumbar protocol. The lower back takes a massive beating from sitting. This involves 3 minutes of alternating pelvic flexions and extensions, and crucially, stretching the psoas muscle.
The psoas is huge here.
Right, because it connects the lower spine to the top of the femur, and when you sit all day, it shortens and tightens, pulling your lower back out of alignment.
Yep.
Fourth, they include a depth strengthening protocol, which is a 3-minute focus on core activation, engaging the transverse abdominis to provide a muscular corsetive support for the spine.
And the final one.
Finally, the integration protocol. 3 minutes of conscious, deliberate walking, shifting from shallow chest breathing to deep, full belly diaphragmatic breathing, and conducting a body scan to neurologically lock in the new postural alignment.
It is so easy to hear a list of stretches and dismiss it. Like, okay, 3 minutes of moving my neck, how much can that really impact my career?
Wait, a 30 to 40% reduction in daily energy costs just from spending a few minutes adjusting my neck and doing chin tucks?
Yes. The documented results of applying these biomechanical resets are staggering. Conexiformation reports that consistent application of these protocols result in a 30 to 40% reduction in daily energy cost.
A 30 to 40% reduction. That number warrants serious reflection. You are reclaiming nearly half of your daily metabolic expenditure.
When you understand the mechanics of the metabolic short circuit we just explored, that 40% return makes complete sense.
Because you're turning off the alarms?
You are systematically turning off the proprioceptive alarm bells. By realigning the structure, the muscles no longer have to fire constantly in isometric contraction. The nociceptors stop sending pain signals to the brain.
So the prefrontal cortex is suddenly liberated from the cognitive load of monitoring physical distress.
Exactly. The energy that was previously trapped in postural survival mode is instantly freed up and made available for executive function, emotional regulation, and deep focus. The return on investment for basic biomechanical maintenance is just phenomenal.
And the benefits of these protocols extend far beyond just energy conservation, right? The sources delve into how posture interacts with leadership, presence, and how others perceive us.
Yes, so this brings us to the charisma and credibility posture, which is rooted in the scientific concept of embodied cognition.
Let's talk about embodied cognition, because the traditional, culturally accepted idea is that our psychological state dictates our physical posture. If you feel confident, you stand up straight. If you feel defeated, you slump.
But embodied cognition flips the arrow of causality. It proves that the relationship is bidirectional, and often the body leads the mind. The physical posture you adopt directly dictates the biochemical cocktail your endocrine system produces. Mind follows body.
The sources detail the exact mechanisms here. When you adopt a posture of expansion, which physically means lifting the sternum, opening the chest cavity, keeping the shoulders low and relaxed, and aligning the head over the spine, you're triggering a specific hormonal response.
Right. Taking up physical space signals dominance and safety to the nervous system.
The result is a measurable increase in testosterone, which is a hormone associated with assertion, risk tolerance, and confidence, and a simultaneous decrease in cortisol, the primary stress hormone.
Conversely, if you adopt a posture of grounding, where you consciously distribute your physical weight evenly through both feet on the floor, feeling the stability of the structure, it sends a parasympathetic signal up the nervous system that reduces mental agitation and physical restlessness.
You are physically anchoring the body, which psychologically anchors the mind.
Exactly. And then there's the aspect of visible breathing.
Oh, this is fascinating.
When you are in a high-stakes environment and you are taking deep, calm, diaphragmatic breaths that are slow enough to be subtly visible to the people around you, a phenomenon of social contagion occurs.
Because human beings are deeply attuned to the autonomic nervous system cues of the people around them.
We are constantly subconsciously scanning each other for signs of threat or safety. If you are taking rapid, shallow breaths in your upper chest, you are signaling panic to the room.
But if your breathing is slow, deep, and rhythmic, it signals absolute self-mastery.
It communicates to everyone else's nervous system. Without a word being spoken, I am in control. The environment is safe. It is the biological foundation of presence and authority.
Think about the practical application of this. Imagine you have to deliver a critical presentation to an adversarial board of directors. If you spend the 3 minutes before that meeting intentionally adopting an expansive posture and grounding your weight, you are fundamentally changing the hardware that will process the stress of that room.
You are altering your own hormonal cocktail, lowering your cortisol and boosting your testosterone before you even open your mouth to speak.
You aren't just faking confidence, you are biologically manufacturing it.
You are convincing your own nervous system that you belong in that room, which naturally convinces everyone else.
So, utilizing posture to plug the metabolic leak and optimize our biochemistry is the first step. But stopping the drain isn't enough, right? We also need to increase the total capacity of the battery. This is where physical movement and sport integrate into the Conexa framework. And I want to be clear, the framework isn't talking about sport in the context of aesthetics, or looking good in a swimsuit, or even basic cardiovascular health.
The sources are emphatic on this distinction. Within this context, sport is not a metaphor for willpower, nor is it a vanity project. It is the literal neurobiological training of your capacity for effort.
When we go back to the time paradox we discussed earlier, the reality that corporate rewards are increasingly delayed, uncertain, or completely vaporized by fast-changing environments, we recognize that modern professionals have a desperate need to learn how to sustain effort without receiving immediate, visible, external validation.
Right. We have to learn how to keep pushing when the boss isn't praising us and the bonus structure is unclear.
And sport provides the perfect controlled environment to train that exact psychological and neurobiological resilience. The Conexa framework identifies three specific pillars demonstrating how athletic training transfers directly to workplace motivation.
Let's go through the pillars. The first pillar is progressive discipline. These are a very simple analogy, taking the stairs instead of the elevator.
It's the mechanics of breaking down an insurmountable goal. If you want to lift 100 pounds, you don't walk into the gym on day one and try to lift 100 pounds. You will fail and injure yourself.
Right. You start with the bar, you go from 0 to 5 pounds, then 5 to 10. You learn the precise skill of fractionating effort. You learn that consistency compounds.
And that skill of fractionating effort is exactly how you must approach a massive, seemingly impossible corporate project. You don't execute a global supply chain overhaul in one move. You break it down into progressive, manageable stressors.
The second pillar of transfer is endogenous reward, which is perhaps the most critical for combating burnout.
I love the mechanics of this one. Endogenous meaning originating from within an organism. When you engage in physical training correctly, the process generates its own internal value.
Yes, you experience the release of endorphins. You feel the tangible sense of accomplishment when a movement becomes smoother. You see visible improvement in your strength or stamina.
You are proving to your brain, on a neurochemical level, that you are capable of creating value entirely outside of an institution's reward system.
You do not need a manager's approval, a KPI dashboard, or a quarterly review to tell you that you squatted heavier today than you did last week. The feedback loop is entirely contained within your own nervous system.
It is the equivalent of building your own internal dopamine mint. You are literally printing your own physiological currency.
And the implications for the workplace are massive.
Yeah.
If your internal economy relies entirely on your boss's praise, and your boss is having a bad month and ignores you, you go biologically bankrupt. Your motivation crashes.
But if you have an endogenous supply of reward generated by your physical practice, you maintain an internal sovereignty. You are insulated against the volatility of corporate feedback.
That internal sovereignty leads directly to the third pillar, resilience to discomfort. Through sport, an individual learns a very nuanced physical vocabulary.
You learn to distinguish between two very different types of pain.
Exactly. On one hand, you have productive discomfort, the deep, dull burn in your muscles during a heavy lift or a long run, which signals that you are pushing your boundaries and forcing adaptation.
And on the other hand,
You have destructive suffering, the sharp, acute pain in a joint or a tendon that signals you are causing mechanical damage to the system.
being able to differentiate between the two is a game-changing skill when applied to the modern workplace. The cognitive translation is direct.
It maps perfectly.
When you face a highly complex, frustrating coding task, or you are trying to learn a dense new financial model, you can recognize, okay, my brain is tired, this is frustrating, but this is productive discomfort. It's hard because I am actively learning and expanding my cognitive capacity.
You lean into it. Right. Conversely, if you are dealing with a deeply toxic manager who screams at you and undermines your safety, you can recognize this is destructive suffering. This is the equivalent of a sharp pain in my knee. It is not making me stronger. It is actively harming my central nervous system.
You learn to endure the former and set hard boundaries against the latter. You are building physical endurance, which maps perfectly onto cognitive endurance.
And the scientific data Conexa provides to substantiate this neurobiological training is really compelling. They report that regular structured exercise yields a 68% increase in dopamine function.
Wait, 68%?
Yes, and this doesn't just mean more dopamine is produced. It means the dopamine receptors in the brain become more sensitive, so you get more motivational mileage out of every unit of reward.
Wow.
Furthermore, exercise causes a 35% reduction in basal cortisol levels. This lowers your resting stress state, dramatically improving your window of tolerance for workplace pressure.
And perhaps most significantly for professionals who need to constantly learn new skills, the data shows a 42% boost in neuroplasticity.
Right, hippocampal neurogenesis.
The literal creation of new neurons in the hippocampus, which is the brain center for learning, memory, and emotional regulation. By stressing the body physically, you're forcing the brain to upgrade its hardware, making you measurably more adaptable to complex, changing environments.
So we have established a robust physical foundation. We've utilized postural protocols to plug the energy leaks, and we've utilized physical movement to expand our internal battery capacity and neuroplasticity. We have this optimized physiological engine.
But the next challenge is applying this energy to the reality of our daily jobs. Because let's be honest, no amount of squats or chin tucks will change the fact that some corporate tasks are just inherently mind-numbing or frustrating.
We all have to do the soul-crushing administrative work.
The framework addresses this through a fascinating cognitive exercise called defining your particular benefit. This is where we bridge the optimized physical state with a psychological strategy.
The objective is to hijack the brain's reward system by actively mapping out your personal gains in any given task.
The key here is that the benefit must be entirely divorced from what the company wants. You ignore the OKRs, the KPIs, and the corporate mission statement. You ask yourself, what do I, as a biological and intellectual entity, genuinely gain in vitality or skill from executing this task?
You are engaging in a deliberate cognitive reframing. You are taking a constraint, an external demand placed upon you, and transforming it into an endogenous vitality gain.
The sources offer some brilliant practical examples of how this shift works. Let's say you are tasked with an incredibly tedious, repetitive reporting project.
Right. The worst.
The natural instinct is to think, I must do this boring reporting because my boss told me to, and it's a waste of my time. The brain registers that as a constraint, and motivation drops. But you reframe it. Executing this massive data report forces me to practice structuring my mind. It is building my analytical stamina and improving my strategic clarity.
Or consider a scenario where you have to manage a highly difficult, conflict-prone employee. Instead of viewing it as a drain, you reframe it. This interaction is a high-stakes, free training session in advanced emotional regulation and negotiation skills I can directly utilize in my personal life and future ventures.
Or a terrifying presentation to the board. It stops being a trial by fire and becomes, I am using this room to develop my personal capacity to transmit complex ideas under pressure and refine my public speaking.
The brilliance of this strategy lies in shifting the locus of control. In psychology, a person with an external locus of control believes that outcomes are dictated by external forces, the boss, the company, the economy.
Which leads to feelings of helplessness and massive energy drain.
Exactly. A person with an internal locus of control believes they dictate their own outcomes. By defining the particular benefit, you are ripping the locus of control away from the corporation and placing it squarely back in your own hands.
But I want to pause and genuinely challenge this concept for a moment. Isn't this just corporate gaslighting? If I'm sitting at my desk looking at a spreadsheet that I know is pointless, and I try to tell myself, this is building my analytical stamina, aren't we just utilizing pop psychology to trick ourselves into loving terrible jobs so the company can extract more labor from us without changing the toxic environment?
It is a vital distinction to make, and the framework is careful not to promote delusion. There is a vast neurocognitive difference between toxic positivity and true reframing.
Okay, what's the difference?
Toxic positivity is a form of denial. It requires you to lie to your nervous system. It sounds like, smile. This pointless spreadsheet is actually fun and we love our corporate family. Your brain knows that is a lie, and suppressing the negative emotion actually increases cortisol.
Right, it feels completely inauthentic.
True neurocognitive reframing, on the other hand, requires radical honesty about the negative aspects of the task while simultaneously extracting the utility. Reframing sounds like, this spreadsheet is incredibly tedious, the process is broken, and I dislike doing it. However, I am choosing to use the next hour of data entry to practice my deep focus protocols and master Excel macros, which makes my resume more valuable on the open market.
You aren't denying the reality of the bad task. You are simply refusing to be a victim of it.
Exactly. You are extracting the nutritional value from a bitter meal. Victimhood is a state of helplessness that completely exhausts the nervous system. Agency, even in microdoses, is highly energizing. You are doing the task for your benefit, not theirs.
Let's delve deeper into one of those specific examples managing conflict. The reframing exercise suggests we view conflict as a chance to practice emotional regulation. But from a biological standpoint, a workplace argument doesn't feel like a practice session.
No, it feels like a life or death threat.
When a colleague undermines you in a meeting or a client starts yelling, the physical sensation is intense and overwhelming. How do we actually survive that biologically in the moment so we can even attempt to reframe it?
We have to acknowledge the severe biological cost of interpersonal conflict. When you perceive a social threat, which to the modern brain is interpreted with the same severity as a physical predator, your endocrine system floods with cortisol and adrenaline.
And that neurochemical spike instantly kills your capacity for complex learning.
It fragments your memory formation, It will likely ruin your sleep architecture for the following night, and it severely dampens your reward sensitivity. Your autonomic nervous system flips a hard switch into the sympathetic state.
This is the classic defensive mode or fight or flight response.
Yes, and the mechanics of the fight or flight response are antithetical to corporate problem solving. When that sympathetic nervous system activates, blood is literally shunted away from the prefrontal cortex, the logical reasoning part of your brain, and redirected to your limbs so you can physically fight or run away.
You are biologically reduced to an animal operating on pure instinct. You lose access to your vocabulary, your strategic thinking disappears, and your emotional regulation collapses.
It's the physiological reason why we often say things we deeply regret during arguments, or why our minds go completely blank when we are challenged publicly.
You are temporarily cognitively impaired. To counteract this, the Conexa framework doesn't rely on psychological mantras like calm down.
Telling someone in fight or flight to calm down is biologically useless.
Instead, they point to a physical emergency brake built into our anatomy, activating the vagus nerve.
The vagus nerve. Cranial nerve X.
Right. This is the absolute superhighway of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest counterpart to the fight or flight system. It runs all the way from the brainstem down through the neck, into the chest, wrapping around the heart and lungs, and deep into the digestive tract.
Exactly. It is the primary conduit for bidirectional communication between the brain and the body's major organs. When you intentionally stimulate the vagus nerve, you are sending a manual override signal up to the brain, forcing it to switch out of the sympathetic defensive state and back into the parasympathetic recovery state.
And the sources provide very specific mechanical techniques to achieve this activation. The most powerful tool is manipulated respiration, specifically diaphragmatic breathing, utilizing a 1-to-2 ratio.
This means deliberately altering the cadence of your breath so that the exhale is twice as long as the inhale.
For example, inhaling deeply into the belly for 4 seconds and then executing a slow, controlled exhale through pursed lips for 8 seconds.
In addition to the respiratory ratio, the framework suggests facial stimulation.
Facial stimulation.
Yes, the vagus nerve has branches that connect to the oculomotor muscles and the facial muscles. Engaging in lateral eye movements, slowly scanning your vision from far left to far right without moving your head or producing an authentic smile, physically tugs on and stimulates the nerve fibers.
Furthermore, low-frequency vocalization is highly effective.
Right, because the vocal cords are innervated by the vagus nerve. So practices like humming, chanting, or even low-pitched singing create a mechanical vibration that stimulates the nerve in the throat.
I want to paint a highly vivid picture of how you, as a listener, can actually deploy this in reality, because it sounds a bit abstract.
Go for it.
Imagine you are standing in the hallway outside a boardroom. You are about to walk into a hostile meeting where you know you're going to get aggressively grilled on your Q2 numbers. You can feel the cortisol spiking, your heart is hammering against your ribs, your palms are sweating, your jaw is clenched. You are entering fight or flight.
It's the worst feeling.
So you stop. You don't try to think your way out of the panic. You utilize this 90-second emergency protocol. You stand there and you take a deliberate 4-second inhale into your diaphragm. You follow it with a painfully slow 8-second exhale. As you do this, you let your eyes slowly track from the left side of the hallway to the right, and you quietly hum a low note in the back of your throat.
To anyone walking by, you might look a bit odd.
Right, but the biology behind what you are doing is ironclad. You are hacking your own hardware.
It is a precise physiological intervention. The reason the 1-to-2 breathing ratio is so devastatingly effective comes back to the evolutionary mechanics we discussed.
How so?
When a human is genuinely running from a predator, the respiratory pattern is characterized by sharp, deep inhales to oxygenate the blood rapidly, followed by fast, explosive exhales. The physiology of panic requires rapid exhalation.
So by forcing the long exhale.
Yes. By consciously forcing your body to execute a long, drawn-out 8-second exhale, you are creating a mechanical state that is physically impossible to maintain if you are truly running for your life. The vagus nerve senses this slow exhalation, reads the expansion of the diaphragm, and sends a massive, undeniable signal up to the brainstem. The organism is executing a respiratory pattern associated with absolute safety. We are not being chased. There is no predator. You can turn the prefrontal cortex back on.
It is the ultimate biological veto power over your own anxiety. It is an incredible tool to have in your pocket for immediate crisis management.
Absolutely.
So looking at the framework so far, we have successfully hacked the present moment. We've used postural liberation to stop the chronic energy leaks at our desk. We've used the particular benefit reframing to extract personal value from mundane tasks. And we've used vagal tone regulation to survive the acute spikes of interpersonal conflict.
But Dr. DeLong is very clear that these are tactical, short-term fixes. They are tourniquets.
To achieve true long-term motivation, we require a much deeper neurochemical shift over what he terms a 10-year horizon.
This is where the framework elevates from the realm of daily survival and stress management into the architecture of a career-long thriving state. Dr. DeLong points out a fundamental misconception about burnout. Burnout does not actually stem from the volume of effort itself. Human beings are incredibly robust. We can work excruciatingly hard for years, decades even, if the conditions are right. True burnout comes from unregenerated effort that is entirely devoid of meaning. It is the exhaustion of the soul, not just the muscle.
To survive and thrive over a decade, the sources indicate that we must fundamentally transition our primary neurochemical fuel source. We have to move away from relying predominantly on dopamine circuits and transition toward oxytocin circuits. Let's delve deeply into why this shift is biologically mandatory.
Let's look at dopamine first. Dopamine is essentially the I want chemical. It is the neurotransmitter of individual pursuit, acquisition, and performance.
It is the chemical that spikes when you set a goal, hitting a sales target, getting a promotion, buying a new car, and drives you to achieve it. It is an incredibly powerful fuel for short-term bursts of intense effort.
However, the biological nature of dopamine is volatile. It is a quick-burning, highly addictive fuel. If you attempt to power a 10-year career solely on the I want dopamine circuit, you run into the law of diminishing returns.
The brain adapts to the baseline.
The promotion that thrilled you for a month suddenly feels normal, and to get that same neurochemical high again, you need a bigger promotion, a higher target, a more extreme acquisition. It is a treadmill that eventually leads to profound systemic exhaustion.
It's the equivalent of trying to heat your house for the winter by constantly burning sheets of newspaper. It flares up hot and bright, but it burns to ash in seconds, and you are constantly frantic looking for the next piece of paper to throw in the fire.
Contrast that with oxytocin.
Right. Why is oxytocin the secret to a 10-year career? Is dopamine just too volatile to rely on for a whole decade?
Yes. Oxytocin is the we are chemical. In evolutionary biology, it is the hormone of social connection, bonding, trust, and altruism. While dopamine is designed to drive the individual to hunt and gather, oxytocin is designed to keep the tribe together so the species can survive across generations.
In a professional context, oxytocin generates deep, enduring satisfaction through collective contribution.
It is the neurochemical released when you mentor a junior colleague and watch them succeed. It is released when you collaborate with a team to build a system, a product, or a culture that will clearly outlast your own tenure at the company.
Oxytocin is a slow-burning, highly sustainable fuel. It is the heavy oak log in the fireplace that burns steadily and radiates heat for hours. It was designed by evolution to make individuals resilient over a lifetime within a community.
That distinction perfectly answers the question of longevity. Dopamine is simply too volatile and individualistic to rely on for a decade. You need that slow-burn communal fuel.
But Conexa is very careful to pair this high-level neurochemical shift with a strict, non-negotiable integration of fundamental physiological needs, right?
Oh, absolutely. You cannot build an oxytocin-driven legacy if your foundational biology is crumbling. The framework treats the biological baseline as absolute law. You cannot cheat the system.
If you are not securing 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep, if you lack stable, nutrient-dense nutrition, if you are not engaging in regular movement, and if you isolated without authentic social connection, the higher-order circuits simply will not function.
Neither dopamine nor oxytocin can override severe sleep deprivation or malnutrition.
To help professionals actually navigate this transition and plan for longevity, the sources detail a comprehensive 10-year mapping tool. It's structured as a 6-step process, and I want us to explore each step deeply, because this is how you construct a bulletproof career architecture.
Step 1 is to audit your current resources. This requires a brutally honest, unsentimental assessment of where you stand today.
You must evaluate your physical energy reserves. Are you constantly exhausted or vibrant? You evaluate your cognitive bandwidth and, crucially, your social capital. Who is in your network? Who trusts you? You have to map the exact inventory of your biological and professional assets.
Step 2 is identifying your non-negotiables. This is a powerful boundary-setting exercise. You must define the biological rhythms and personal commitments that you absolutely will not sacrifice for any corporate demand.
This might mean declaring, I will not check emails between 8 p.m. and 7 a.m. so my circadian rhythm can reset, or I will not compromise my weekend long run regardless of quarter-end pressures. You are drawing a hard line around the assets that keep you functional.
Step 3 is defining your contribution zones. This is where the shift toward oxytocin becomes tactical. You must identify specific areas within your professional ecosystem where you can make an impact that goes beyond your individual KPIs.
Where can you share knowledge? What processes can you improve for the next generation of hires? How can you utilize your skills to elevate the collective capability of your team?
Step 4 is building a development timeline. Once you know how you want to contribute, you map out the specific skills, both hard technical skills and soft interpersonal skills, that you will need to acquire over the next decade to make that contribution possible. You treat your own development as a multi-year curriculum.
Step 5 is cultivating a support network. An oxytocin-driven career cannot be built in isolation. You need to actively curate a group of mentors, peers, and mentees.
This isn't superficial networking. It is building a tribe of mutual accountability and shared values that can buffer you against corporate volatility.
And finally, step 6, which is arguably the most critical for sustaining motivation. Establish personal success metrics that are entirely independent of the company.
This goes right back to the internal locus of control. You have to clearly define what a win looks like for you based on your own values, regardless of what the HR performance review dictates.
If the company decides to freeze bonuses, but you hit your personal metric of successfully mentoring 3 junior staff members into new roles, you still register a massive, fulfilling victory.
Precisely. The ultimate goal of this entire 10-year mapping process, and indeed the entire Conexa formation framework, is to guide the individual toward becoming somatically and psychologically autonomous.
You become an independent energy system operating within the corporate structure rather than a dependent node draining yourself to feed it.
Exactly.
Let's bring this incredibly deep dive to a close. We have covered an immense amount of scientific and strategic ground today, synthesizing what is truly a paradigm shift presented by Dr. Christophe Delong and the Conexa formation.
We've moved from the macroeconomic realities of the time paradox down into the microscopic mechanics of the proprioceptive loop and back out to the 10-year horizon of oxytocin and legacy.
The core takeaway that threads all of this together is profound in its simplicity. Your body is not merely a meat vehicle designed to carry your brain from one Zoom meeting to the next.
No, it is the absolute non-negotiable foundation of your willpower, your charisma, your emotional regulation, and your long-term professional endurance.
Motivation is not a fixed character trait that you either possess or lack. It is a highly malleable biological state. If you diligently manage the physical state, the psychological motivation naturally inevitably follows.
We open this deep dive by discussing how the medical diagnosis for modern burnout often feels murky, lacking the clean, binary precision of an X-ray showing a broken bone. The symptoms are complex and overwhelming.
But perhaps the treatment, the very first step toward recovery, doesn't have to be as complicated as the disease. It can begin with the purely physical.
The foundation of change is always the body.
So we want to leave you with a final practical thought to carry into your week. The next time you're sitting at your desk staring at a screen and you feel that dark, overwhelming wave of intense burnout or apathy begin to wash over, you pause.
Just pause.
What if the immediate answer isn't that you need to drastically overhaul your life, quit your job, or flee to a remote island? What if the very first vital step to reclaiming your ambition and clearing the muddy waters of your mind is simply to pull your shoulders back, align your cervical spine, take a deep, deliberate 4-second breath into your diaphragm, and follow it with a slow, controlled 8-second exhale? The power to change your mind is quite literally in your lungs and in your spine. Start there.